Hello, Mental Performance Coach Carl here. I hope you guys are all safe and happy and healthy during this quarantine. I know it's been really hard on a lot of people for a whole host of reasons. So I actually wanted to make a small video series going over some of the questions and things that I've been getting from my clients, from friends and family, and even just strangers who want to know more about mental health, mental skills training, and how they can kind of train their brains to be happy and healthy and effective during this time. A couple weeks ago, I did a video on mental flexibility and why it's such a super important and crucial skill to have, and it also went over some ways to develop it. And if you're interested in that video, I'll leave a link for it down below. I highly recommend checking it out. It's got a lot of really great stuff in there. But from that video stemmed a lot of these questions, and I got a whole bunch of feedback from people who were looking for more. So I decided to just kind of pull from you guys and take some of your questions and start making some videos out of the things that I'm hearing are kind of pain points for a lot of people right now. So I have a question here today. What I'll say before we kind of hop into that is at the end of this video, I'll have my email address up on screen. You guys can grab that and send me any questions that you have, feedback that you guys want to give me in regards to the video. I would love to hear it all. Also, definitely leave some comments down below just talking about whether this is something that hit home for you, whether it's something that you feel like you enjoyed learning more about, or that you're going to be able to kind of use, or how you're going to use it in your day-to-day. It's Mental Health Awareness Month. I want to try and continue the conversation as much as we can about mental health and what that looks like for people, because right now it's just such a super crucially important topic that we really should be talking about more, and I want to try and facilitate that conversation as much as I can. So thank you guys for that, and with that, let's hop into this week's question. This week's question comes from Stacy R. Stacy R is asking a question that I feel like a lot of people want to know more about. I know it's something that I personally have dealt with and had to think about a lot more critically since starting to work from home. And so here is her question. I'm finding it really hard to separate my work time from my personal time while working from home. Are there any tips and tricks for this? Again, something that I know a lot of people are dealing with right now for while working from home. And so I've kind of developed 5 tips to try and help work through this. Number 1 is going to be scheduling. Trying to schedule your day out as much as you can while knowing that as soon as you start to schedule things, problems are going to come up, issues are going to come up, and that's natural. But sitting down and trying to schedule your day has shown to have really healthy benefits to freeing up your time and making you have a really clear indicator of when your work day is and when your personal day begins. So trying to give yourself that schedule can kind of help with that separation of things. It also just gives you the ability to be a little bit more in control over what your day looks like, and instead of letting the day just happen to you, you can kind of force your will a little bit more onto your day, which when we as human beings have a little bit more control over things, we tend to be happier, we tend to be healthier, and we tend to get more stuff done. So scheduling your day. Little tip on this one, a little side tip on this one, I guess, is that a lot of people are very used to working the 9 to 5 or 8 to 9 hours of work a day. That might not be as feasible while working from home, and that's okay. We want to try and make sure that when we're scheduling things, we're building in some things throughout the day that can kind of help separate what we would have been doing at work from what we have right now at home. You guys have a lot more responsibilities and things that you have to take care of, a lot more hats that you guys have to wear while being home. So it's important to take that stuff into account when you're scheduling out your day. Be your own scientist with it. Figure out a system that works best for you. I've got a client who works 15 minutes at a time with 2 to 3 minute breaks built in throughout their day. And that seems to be the best thing for her to get as much work done as she possibly can, while also not burning herself out and being absolutely miserable by the end of her day. So really there's no end to the way that you can kind of schedule your day that might work best for you. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2, routines. Our human brain absolutely loves, adores, is the biggest fan of habits and routines. So you used to have a habit, or a lot of people used to have a habit of what they would do when they woke up in the morning before they got ready for work, or just before they went to work in the first place. So, wake up, go to the bathroom, brush your teeth, take a shower, go downstairs, drink some coffee, eat a bagel, pack your lunch, out the door, right? And when you're going through that process, and you think back to going through that process, you weren't typically, most people, weren't thinking about counting their brush strokes of how they were brushing their teeth, or the specific system in which they were going through showering. Your brain, once it starts to get into a habit and once it starts to get into a routine of things, starts to kind of decrease the mental capacity that it needs to send in the direction of those things, and instead starts to consider other stuff. It starts to think about the business meeting you have later that day, or what you're having for dinner, or when you're going to pick up the kids, or what the rest of your day looks like and the schedule for your day. And so it frees up a lot of space for your brain to go and do those things and start to kind of consider what the rest of the day looks like. If we can build habits even into our day-to-day now, we can start to create very clear separations and ideas of when one thing begins to when one thing ends. As important as it is to have a pre-work routine, it's also super helpful to have an end-of-work routine. So what does your end-of-work routine look like? Well, it might look like shutting off your laptop. It might look like gathering up your papers and putting them into a folder, and then taking your laptop and folder and putting them someplace in your house where it's out of sight, out of mind. That might be exactly what your brain needs to kind of trigger, oh, okay, we're going through the process of ending our day, which means that work is done, and now it's time to move into personal time. So routines can be super, super helpful in that process. Next thing is something that I know a lot of people are talking about, and it is super, super important, and we're going to talk about why, which is environments. Okay, so we want to try the best that we can to separate our work environment from our personal space environment. I know that's not super feasible for a lot of people just due to limitations of space. But again, going back to the routine of trying to clear that space and trigger in your brain, hey, this has gone from a workspace to a personal space, can be really, really helpful. As well, as comfortable as it may be to lay in bed or sit up in bed and work from home in bed, it does create some problems for people in that your brain starts to associate being in bed with work time. And so when you try to go to bed later on that evening, your brain is going, oh, we're in bed. We should probably be thinking about work. And that can cause a whole host of other problems. So trying to separate those environments a little bit so that way your brain has a bit of an easier time differentiating between workspaces and personal spaces and work time and personal time can really help it just, again, develop those habits that might be super helpful for you. The next thing, reward yourself. Give yourself some small rewards throughout the day, whether that's going for a 15-minute walk, reading a book, scrolling through Facebook and Twitter, just getting outside a little bit. Getting outside is something I'm super pushing for. It's got a whole host of other mental benefits that you guys can use. And so, getting out into nature just a little bit a day, especially now that I know in northeastern Pennsylvania, the weather's getting a little bit nicer. It can be really, really helpful and healthy to help avoid burnout and things like that. But even just giving yourself those small rewards throughout the day can keep yourself going. It helps kind of mitigate the effects of burnout a little bit and gives you something to kind of look forward to throughout your day as well. So there's a lot of really, really great benefits to giving yourself those small rewards. Again, caveat, make sure that you are scheduling that stuff into your work time. Don't just decide halfway through your day that you're going to stop working for 20 minutes because you're bored and you don't want to do it. That's when you start to develop bad habits that kind of distract you away from your work and get in the way of productivity, and ultimately actually ends up leading to worse mental health. And we're talking then the schedule that you probably worked so hard to put together is no longer a schedule anymore, and it avoid that. So schedule in those periods of time where you're going to say, okay, for 15 minutes I'm going to step away from my laptop, I'm going to step away from my workspace, I'm going to go do X, Y, or Z, and then you're giving yourself the ability to go do that stuff guilt-free, and can really be beneficial for your mental health and just keeping you in a good place throughout your workday. And then the last thing that I have, and this is something that I myself have had to kind of check in with myself on a lot, cut yourself some slack. There is no perfect science to this stuff. There is just figuring out what works best for you, tweaking and testing it, and working around it and working around what ends up happening inevitably through the course of just the day being the day. We want to cut ourselves some slack and recognize that we don't need to be on top of it all the time. We don't need to have all the answers. We can just work the best that we can with what we have, and that is okay. And when we work from that frame of mind, we're way better at handling setbacks and problems that come up. We're also just in a better mental health space throughout the day. We're a lot happier, and we also give ourselves the ability to, when we do get to the end of all of this, when we get to the end of our workday or even the end of quarantine, to be able to say that we did the best that we could with what we had, and that helps avoid burnout. So those are my quick tips. Those are my couple of tips for kind of helping separate your workspace from your personal space and your work life from your personal life. I hope that it helps you. I hope that it helps Stacy. And like I said, definitely continue the conversation. I want to try and do this as much as I can. Send me your questions in the email. Send me your feedback through my email. Leave some comments below. We're all in this together. We're all trying to make this work. And I think that the more that we talk about this stuff, the more that we share with one another, the healthier we're all going to be by going through this, and the more we're going to learn and be able to get through this and say that we did what we needed to do, and that we're actually better on the other side. So that being said, that's all I have for today. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will talk to you all soon. Bye.